Ukraine war comes to Moscow as drones strike both capitals. Ukrainian drones struck wealthy districts of Moscow on Tuesday, Russia said in what one politician called the most dangerous attack on the capital since World War II, while Kyiv was also hit from the air for the third time in 24 hours. Since Russia sent tens of thousands of troops into its neighbor in February 2022, the war has largely been fought inside Ukraine. Aerial strikes on targets far from the front have intensified amid a ragged stalemate on the ground, with Russian forces entrenched along an extended line in Ukraine's east and south. One of the strategic southern places Russian forces have controlled since nearly the beginning of the invasion is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and on Tuesday the United Nations nuclear watchdog chief asked Ukraine and Russia to respect 5 principles to safeguard the station. Neither Ukraine nor Russia have committed to respect the principles. International Atomic Energy Agency.
Chief Rafael Grossi has been trying for months to secure an agreement to reduce the risk of a catastrophic nuclear accident from military activity, like shelling at Zaporizhzhia, Europe's biggest nuclear power plant.
In a briefing to the UN Security Council, Grossi said the principles included that there should be no attack on or from the plant, and that it not be used as a base for heavy weapons and military equipment. He called for off-site power to the plant to remain available and secure. The nuclear safety and security situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant continues to be extremely fragile and dangerous, Grossi said. Military activities continue in the region and may well increase very considerably in the near future. Russia's UN Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia said Mr. Grossi's proposals to ensure the security of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant are in line with the measures that we've already been implementing for a long time. Ukraine's ambassador to the UN, Sergei Kyslytsya, said the principles must be complemented with the demand of full demilitarization and deoccupation of the station. Injuries and evacuations in Moscow. Commenting on the early Tuesday morning air attacks in Moscow, the Defense Ministry said 8 drones sent by Ukraine and targeting civilians were shot down or diverted with electronic jammers, though Baza, a Telegram channel with links to the security services, said there were more than 25. Mikhailo Podolyak, a Ukrainian presidential aide, denied Kyiv was directly involved, but said, "We are pleased to watch events and forecast more such strikes." 2 people were injured while some apartment blocks were briefly evacuated, according to Moscow's mayor. Residents said they heard loud bangs followed by the smell of petrol. Some filmed a drone being shot down in a plume of smoke. The drones targeted some of Moscow's most prestigious districts, including where Russian President Vladimir Putin and the elite have residences. He was later in the Kremlin and received a briefing on the attack, a spokesman said. Putin later said Ukraine's biggest drone strike on Moscow was an attempt to frighten and provoke Russia, and that air defenses around the capital would be strengthened. Civilian targets in Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities have since the earliest days of the war been struck repeatedly by Russian drones and missiles. But Tuesday marked only the second time Moscow had come under direct fire. In Washington, the White House said it was still gathering information on the reports of drones striking in Moscow. "We do not support attacks inside of Russia. That's it. Period," White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said at a briefing. Washington is a major supplier of weaponry to Ukraine on the condition it uses it to defend itself and to retake Ukrainian territory occupied by Russian forces. Russian lawmaker Maxim Ivanov called it the most serious assault on Moscow since Nazi Germany's invasion in World War II, saying no Russian could now avoid the new reality. Russian state television gave the attacks calm coverage, and many Muscovites shrugged them off. Olga, who said she lived near to the site of one of the drone collisions on Profsoyuzhnaya Street, called the strikes logical, to be expected. What else were we waiting for? Meanwhile, Russia put Ukraine's top generals on a wanted list. RIA news agency said, Kyiv city hit 17 times by airstrikes in May. Ukraine said 4 people died around the country in Russia's latest attacks, with 34 wounded, including 2 children. Ukrainian air defense shot down 29 of 31 Iranian made Shahad drones in Kyiv, the Armed Forces General Staff said. A 33-year-old woman died on her balcony when debris from a destroyed Russian projectile hit a Kyiv high-rise, officials said. Russia has assaulted Kyiv 17 times in May with drones or missiles, mostly at night. In a Tuesday evening video address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky appeared to suggest some authorities were not doing enough to protect citizens during air raids. Shelters in cities have to be accessible. People should understand when and how the number and availability of shelters will increase, he said, but did not elaborate. Moscow drone attack was like a horror film. Raid on the capital shocked residents nearby. But will it change Russians' views of the Ukraine war? 15 months into a war launched by their government against Ukraine, some Muscovites early morning on Tuesday for the first time woke up to explosions. It was like the sound of a short thunder strike. A man called Andrei, who lives opposite one of the buildings which suffered damage, told the TV channel Dost, an independent station working from exile in the Netherlands. For a moment, it's like you're in a horror film. I ran to my relatives and yelled at them to get away from the window. Russia's defense ministry said in a statement on Tuesday that it had intercepted 8 drones in a terrorist attack by Ukraine, although Kyiv denied its involvement in Russian-language telegram channels, initially spoke of 25 drones. Although not entirely unexpected, Russian regions bordering Ukraine, such as Belgorod, suffer almost daily strikes, and an incident in early May in which 2 drones flew onto the Kremlin compound set the stage for further incursions. The drone raid marks a landmark moment as the biggest strike against Moscow since the beginning of the war. Dmitry Oreshkin, an independent political analyst, said it heralded the end of a phase of complacency in which Russians accept the war as something that does not threaten their own lives. The war is breaking into people's minds and forcing itself to be talked about. That's a bad sign for Putin, he told Dost. It is not as much a strike on Moscow as a strike on Moscow as a strike on Russians' minds. The Kremlin elite is likely to take particular note. The drones fell close to wealthy areas in western Moscow where they live in lavish homes behind tall fences. One drone crashed to the ground within 10 kilometers of Putin's Novo Ogoryovo residence. It has spurred some, like former Kremlin advisor Sergei Markov, to conclude the drone wave was in fact an attack on the president, even as Russia's foreign ministry called it exclusively aimed at the civilian population with the aim of spreading panic. But if a mind shift is taking place among the general population, it was not tangible on Tuesday, a sunny spring day in Moscow. Other than the residents of the affected buildings, the only group to have been seriously inconvenienced appeared to be those behind the wheel, especially taxi drivers, with some important thoroughfares temporarily shut, a seemingly heavier traffic police presence, and glitchy jeep systems. As has been the case at other sensitive moments for Russia in the war, the authorities on Tuesday projected an image of routine control and efficiency. Praising Russia's air defenses, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told journalists President Vladimir Putin would not be making a special statement, and there was no threat to Moscow resident safety. Moscow's mayor Sergei Sobyanin said there were no casualties and there was only minor damage to 2 buildings. Residents who had been evacuated this morning were already returning to their homes, he said. Helping Russian officials contain any concern, let alone panic, is the fact many Russians have stopped following the news altogether or do so only partially, insulating them from events, sometimes only several metro stops away. Some of those who had heard of the attack, meanwhile, said they did not feel additional worry, maintaining a seemingly impenetrable shield of jaded indifference towards the war. There's no reason to expect that this will happen on a regular basis. One male Muscovite in his 30s who preferred to stay anonymous for safety reasons told Politico, "Once it becomes a daily thing, I'll probably have more specific feelings about it." Sleeping through, another resident of one of the affected neighborhoods had simply slept through the blasts. Another said nothing could upstage the shock of February 24, 2022, the first day of Russia's invasion. Rather than a sharp wake-up call, Tuesday's attack will most likely serve as another drop in the ocean of simmering unease among the general population and an energy boost to those beating the war drum. State Duma Deputy Maxim Ivanov on Tuesday wrote on Telegram that the drone attacks brought home a new reality to Russians, in which those who did not defend Russia as a united fist would face a wave of shame, of cowardice, collaboration, and betrayal. Most tangibly, the drone attack could result in even tighter control over information in Russia. As scores of photos and videos circulated on social media, Moscow's Prosecutor General's office on Tuesday issued a warning against those who published information departing from the official line, threatening them with prosecution for the spreading fake news, a charge which in Russia carries a prison sentence of up to 3 years. Lawmakers have also called for a ban on the publication of photos and videos that could be used for military purposes, such as geolocating air defense systems. Anti-war Russians and Ukrainians commenting on Tuesday's drone attack were quick to point out that while new to Russia's capital, it paled in comparison to what Kyiv undergoes on a daily basis. According to Kyiv, Russian drone attacks on Ukraine on Tuesday killed 4 and left 34 wounded. Tonight, Muscovites felt a tenth, if not 100th, of what Kyiv residents feel every night, prominent Ukrainian filmmaker Alexander Rodnyansky said in an Instagram post, alongside photos of destroyed buildings in Kyiv. Take a close look at these photos. This is now your reality as well. Russia, Ukraine fail to embrace IAEA, the plan to protect nuclear plant. Neither Russia nor Ukraine committed to respect 5 principles laid out by International Atomic Energy Agency. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi on Tuesday to try to safeguard Ukraine's Russian, Ukraine's Russian, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Grossi, who spoke at the UN Security Council, has tried for months to craft an agreement to reduce the risk of a catastrophic nuclear accident from military activity like shelling at Europe's biggest nuclear power plant. His 5 principles included that there should be no attack on or from the plant, and that no heavy weapons, such as multiple rocket launchers, artillery systems and munitions, and tanks or military personnel be housed there. Grossi also called for off-site power to the plant to remain available and secure, for all its essential systems to be protected from attacks or sabotage, and for no actions that undermine these principles. The UN nuclear watchdog's chief described the situation at Zaporizhzhia as extremely fragile and dangerous, adding that military activities continue in the region and may well increase very considerably in the near future. While Russia said it would do all it could to protect the power plant, which it has occupied for more than a year, it did not explicitly commit to abide by Grossi's 5 principles. Mr. Grossi's proposals to ensure the security of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant are in line with the measures that we've already been implementing for a long time, Russia's UN Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia said. Ukraine's ambassador to the UN, Sergei Kyslytsya, said the principles must be complemented with the demand of full demilitarization and deoccupation of the station. Russia and Ukraine have blamed each other for shelling that has repeatedly downed power lines vital to cooling the reactors, which are shut down but which need a constant supply of electricity to keep the nuclear fuel inside cool and prevent a possible meltdown. Grossi described Tuesday's meeting as a step in the right direction and said the IAEA would reinforce its staff at Zaporizhzhia and track compliance with the principles. Western powers accused Russia, whose forces invaded Ukraine in February 2022, of putting Zaporizhzhia at risk, with the United States demanding that Russia remove its weapons and civil and military personnel from the plant. It is entirely within Moscow's control to avert a nuclear catastrophe and to end its war of aggression against Ukraine, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield said. Russia denies that it has military personnel at the power plant, and it describes the war, which has killed thousands and reduced cities to rubble, as a special military operation to denazify Ukraine and protect Russian speakers. Ukraine calls it an imperialist land grab prompted by its quest for closer relations with the West after a long history of domination by Moscow.